So today's a fun day. I've been figuring out fertilizer prices, which are getting better. They're still stupid high, but they're not as stupid high as they were last year. Things have come down some. Figuring out acreage and how many pounds we need on every little piece of ground. Total, this is how many tons I'm spreading next year. And that's about what it's going to cost to do it. And mind you, we've already spent probably 50 grand on turkey litter and getting that spread. So a lot of our nutrient needs, I would say, are going to be covered by turkey litter next year. And we're still putting on that much fertilizer. Now, I am building a lot of P&K levels, and I'm pushing corn to go 250 plus on a lot of acres. Depending on the ground, like the state ground, I don't expect it to make anything over 180 typically. It's not going to. The reclaimed coal mine ground, if it makes 160, 170, I'm going to be tickled to death just because it dries out. There's this much topsoil. I mean, you don't expect much out of it. But I mean, the better ground that I farm, we're shooting for 250. You know, soybeans, I'm shooting anything under 70. I'm honestly just disappointed with anymore. Soybeans, I like to be 70, 80, 90, 100 bushel soybeans. We're going to have the fertility to do that. I am building almost every acre that I farm, even the acres that are in really good shape. I'm still building them. I've got some long-term leases. I've got ground locked in for several years. Ground I know is not going to go anywhere. And I farm it like it's my own. I farm it as if I owned it. Keeps the landlord happy because their ground's in really, really good shape. And it keeps me happy because I keep growing good yields. So it is profitable for both me and the landlord that way. But fertilizer is expensive. I mean, 200 grand next year. And had it not been for turkey litter, it'd probably be closer to 400,000. That's how much P&K and a little bit of nitrogen, which I don't credit for much. The nitrogen that is in turkey litter, I basically, it's a bonus, is how I look at it. So normally I figure in like a 0.8 conversion factor. So I need 0.8 pounds of nitrogen of actual N to grow a bushel of corn. That's generally what I use, depending on the farm. Normally I would say 1 to 1. If you were going all up front, you're going to lose some of that nitrogen. But since I split apply all of my nitrogen, everything's either going to have urea spread over the top or 28 and ATS side dressed. Everything's getting top dressed or side dressed basically. So I'm able to get that 0.8 because I'm splitting up that application instead of hitting it all at once in one shot. So I don't quite need that 1 to 1 ratio. I get by with 0.8 pretty well. And the past few years I've been pulling off some really, really good yields. And really that factor has been more of like a 0.65, 0.7 split apply nitrogen, which wasn't the yield goal I was shooting for, but I surpassed that a lot. So I had more nitrogen out there than I thought, or it just used it more efficiently. Either way, it's been doing really well. So I'm shooting for a lot of 250 bushel corn. We're growing a lot of white corn next year. About half of my corn acres will be white corn. And then half of them will be yellow corn. And then, corn acres. And then we're going to have more corn than soybeans next year. That said, I'll introduce you to the next project. So ignore the muddy farmyard. And the worst thing that hits my budget is her and my fuel tank. It seems to go empty a lot. Anyhow, like I was saying, we're starting a really big project. Big for me. For some of you BTOs, it's not big, but for me, it's big. In addition to building an addition on our house, we have another construction project going on. And other than the thousands of dollars of grass, seed, and gravel that I need to make this place look nice again, right there past the tee of that driveway, we're putting 2 grain bins that are bigger than any grain bin I've either had or rented. They are going to be 2 48 foot diameter grain bins. And I think they're 11 rings tall. And then I've got 2 25 horse fans going on each of them. So there'll be 100 horsepower worth of wind getting blown up through the corn. And I also bought an AGI SureTrack system that will have bin monitoring. So it is going to keep the temperature, keep the moisture levels of the grain, and that will essentially let those fans kick on and off automatically, and I can monitor all that on my phone. But they're going to be built right in here. So I don't know exactly where we're putting them. Honestly, we're running 3-phase to it off of that pole right there. And to run 3-phase, let alone underground, it is expensive. It is really, really expensive. So, you know, that said, that's kind of going to determine where these bins go completely. But I would say that we're going to gravel from there over a good ways. That way we've got plenty of room to get trucks in here. And then I'm going to keep graveling back there. You can actually see I've already got a pile, and that makes a loop. So we'll have a good drive in right here, come in here, plenty of room to get the trucks turned around. Long term, my shop right now it's sufficient for what I need it to be. It's heated, it's warm, it's closed up, it's out of the weather. We can work on equipment there, but like the combine doesn't fit in there. Several of the implements don't fit in there just because the doors aren't big enough. So long term, and I'm talking like years down the road from now, I'd like to build a shop off of this shed here and come out towards that driveway and then gravel all that out there. This is very long term, but then we could do a lean-to off this shed, tie it into the shop, have a wash bay right where I'm standing, and this machine shed here is really long and narrow, so we're gonna have our grain system over there, and then you could park semis right in here. It's just an open-sided shed, so as you can see, it would work really well for parking semis in here. I've got the combine in there right now, but you know, that's long-term plans, talking way down the road. But the reason I'm building grain bins out here is 1, I've got a good driveway to them. 2, yes, it needs gravel, but 2, we've got 3-phase power. Obviously, we're on a good road, got a 2-lane highway here. It's always, even in bad wintertime weather, it's always one of the first ones to be cleared. We are in a good spot with power too. I get power from that direction and I get power from that direction. So if a power line goes down somewhere south of me, we get fed from the north and vice versa. So our power never goes out for very long at all. So that's another thing. We are putting in 460, not 230. So we are going to have a lot of power here. What I'm doing, these 48-foot bins, I'll shoot a picture up here. But that's what I'm looking for. And so 48 foot, 48 foot, 48 foot, 48 foot, just build them in a row here. Have a grain leg here, have a dryer, a little dryer shack. I don't really see the point in an overhead bin. I just see the point in putting in a really big leg that loads a truck very fast. That way, basically, if you've got a 10,000 or even an 8,000, 10,000 bushel an hour leg, now I'm not building a leg yet, but down the road, an 8 or 10,000 bushel an hour leg will load a truck just as quickly as an overhead bin, in my opinion. and you can also use that to unload trucks. So in my opinion, I'd save the money on an overhead and just take that money towards putting in a bigger leg. That's my philosophy, right or wrong, but that's my plan. What we are going to do, which it's not here right now because we started loading beans out, but the swing away auger should hit these bins. It's going to be at its max. We might have to do some sketchy stuff, but we're going to have stairs on one bin and then a little platform that walks across to the other. There are going to be plenty of roof vents. The CFM on these bins is going to be like 0.8. So for those of you that know what that means, it's a lot. It's a lot of airflow. So we'll be able to dry a little bit of grain in these bins. I am going to put heaters on at least one of the fans, one of the 4. And that's what we're going to have here. So, and while we're talking about grain storage, I'll just start with this. I'm just going to make this short and sweet. But basically, this project said and done is going to cost about 42 cents a bushel, spread out over 10 years with interest included. I'll let your imagination figure out the rest there if you really want to. But 42 cents a bushel, spread out over 10 years, interest included. Typically, in basis alone, I can pick up 42 cents. Generally, it's even more than that. Between harvest price and, say, January through March, April, even into the summer, sometimes I'll hold some grain and get rid of it basically when I get a chance. Or if there's a really good price. Basically, grain bins just give you the option to sell whenever you want, not when you have to because it's coming out of the field. Which brings me to my next point. Storage at harvest makes me way, way more efficient. Right now, we're driving several miles a lot of the time to get to rental grain bins that I rent. Everything that I farm is pretty well within 10 miles of here. Everything I farm is pretty close to home. So to have grain bins here is going to speed us up tremendously because we're not going to have to drive very far to get to them. We're going to have good driveways to get in and out. And we won't need necessarily 3 and 4 guys to keep the combine rolling. With storage here, one guy can drive 3 trucks. One guy could drive 2 trucks and probably keep up. With a lot of the smaller fields and stuff that I have, even though my combine is a Class 8 combine, and in 250 bushel corn, once we have a field opened up, we can crank out a lot of bushels in a short amount of time. But you got to factor in the time that you're shelling end rows, you're opening up a field, you're going around a washout ditch, you're, moving equipment. You're not always cranking out 4,000 or 5,000 bushel an hour. I can, but it's rare. So really the way I see it, these grain bins eliminate the need for maybe another guy. They eliminate the need for more trucks, more people, because we're centrally located. So you're saving money there too. But the main thing is storage allows us to shell corn whenever we want and sell it whenever we want. And that's worth just as much as making money on basis is. These grain bins outside the shop here that are already here that we're going to keep using as soybean bins, they were built in the late 60s, early 70s. You know how many times those things have paid for themselves? Dozens of times. I mean, they have paid for themselves time and time and time and time again. We've kept them painted. We don't let grain spoil in them. They last forever. They're starting to break down, don't get me wrong. They've got their issues, like the lids on top of them. We've got them tied down with electric fence wire and everything else, but they work, We put grain in them, it stores grain, it dries it down a little bit, and we pull it back out in 4 or 5 months, and we sell it for a higher price almost always. I'm not saying every year, but typically we're always selling at a higher price out of the grain bins than out of the field. That said, this year wasn't one of those years. I was getting $16 a bushel for soybeans. Now we're selling for like $15.50, but that's rare. Like 4 out of 5 years, we sell for more than what we would have if we had sold out of the field. So I believe that they will pay for themselves. I believe that the efficiency alone is worth it. It's not a small dollar amount project, but I think it's going to be a project that's worth it. So grain storage and tile, two things that I'm really focused on long term. Obviously short term, like I talked about, building fertility, long term, improving drainage and having grain storage. We'll keep running old 90s model equipment. That's all I got. So we could do a quick little equipment tour, I guess. Everything's mostly in here, so we could do a shop and equipment tour real quick, I suppose. Actually, just kidding, we can't, because this video was getting way too long. But we're loading corn at rental bins. Ironically enough, I want to pull my hair out today, even though I cut it. I want to pull my hair out with rental bins every time that I deal with rental bins, which is all the more reason to build new bins that are at home and that are actually taken care of. Anyhow, that's all I got for you today. I will be doing a shop tour and a equipment tour next video, so stay tuned and it'll be there for you guys.